Every January, the most powerful people in the world gather in a small Swiss ski resort called Davos for the World Economic Forum. Heads of state, central bank governors, technology billionaires, media executives. They attend by invitation only. Their discussions about global policy are not secret. Their conclusions are published in detailed reports and implemented through the organizations they lead. In 2020, the WEF announced an initiative called the Great Reset. What followed was a level of public confusion, dismissal, and genuine concern that merits a clear examination of what was actually proposed and by whom. The Great Reset was formally announced by WEF founder Klaus Schwab and Prince Charles in June 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Schwab described it as a unique window of opportunity to reshape and rethink our economies, our societies, and our priorities. The WEF published a book by Schwab and Thierry Malaret titled COVID-19, The Great Reset, which outlined in considerable detail what they envisioned. This is not a leaked document. It was published and promoted. Understanding the Great Reset requires reading what its proponents actually wrote, not what its critics claim they wrote, and not the official dismissals of what they wrote. The Great Reset is built on several existing frameworks. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and what Schwab calls stakeholder capitalism, a model in which corporations are accountable not just to shareholders but to a broader range of stakeholders including governments, NGOs, and international institutions. Schwab's book argues that the pandemic created an opportunity to implement these frameworks at a speed that would not have been possible without the crisis. He explicitly describes the opportunity to build back better, a phrase that subsequently appeared in policy platforms of governments in multiple countries simultaneously. Among the policies advocated in reset-adjacent literature are digital identity systems, central bank digital currencies, expanded global governance frameworks, and what the WEF describes as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, a transformation of economies through artificial intelligence, automation, and biotechnology. The concern from critics is not primarily that these technologies are inherently sinister. The concern is about the governance framework being proposed, global institutions with authority to coordinate these transitions, reducing the ability of individual nations and individual citizens to opt out. The phrase "you will own nothing and you will be happy" appeared in a 2016 WEF promotional video about what the world might look like in 2030. The WEF has since distanced itself from the phrase, calling it speculative. The underlying policy shift it describes, however, is present in serious economic literature, a transition from ownership to subscription and access models, from individual asset ownership to service-based consumption. Whether this represents a deliberate agenda or a market trend accelerated by economic conditions is a matter of genuine debate. What is not debatable is that housing affordability, asset ownership, and wealth concentration are all moving in the direction the phrase describes. Central bank digital currencies are being developed by over 100 countries representing more than 95% of global GDP. A CBDC is a digital version of a national currency issued directly by the central bank. Unlike cash, a CBDC can be programmed with conditions. It can be set to expire, limited to certain categories of spending, or restricted based on the behavior of the holder. China's digital yuan already has these programmable features. Proponents argue this prevents money laundering and enables more targeted economic policy. Critics argue it is the most powerful financial surveillance and control mechanism ever created. Environmental, social, and governance scoring, known as ESG, is a framework that rates corporations on criteria beyond financial performance. Proponents argue it aligns corporate behavior with broader social goals. Critics argue it is a mechanism for large institutional investors to impose political and social policy preferences on corporations and, through them, on employees and customers without democratic accountability. The concern is not that environmental or social responsibility is undesirable. The concern is about who decides what environmental and social responsibility means and through what accountability structure. The COVID-19 pandemic produced an accelerated push for global health governance. The WHO's proposed pandemic treaty, under negotiation since 2021, would give the WHO expanded authority over national health responses during declared pandemics. Proponents argue coordination is essential for managing global health threats. Critics argue it represents an unprecedented transfer of sovereignty from elected national governments to an unelected international body. The treaty negotiations have been contentious, with multiple countries pushing back against provisions they argue would override domestic health policy decisions. The fundamental tension at the heart of the Great Reset debate is democratic accountability. The policies being discussed at Davos and in WEF publications are real policies that affect real people's lives. They are being designed and promoted by an extraordinarily small group of extraordinarily powerful individuals who are accountable to no electorate. When the head of the WEF says there is a window of opportunity to reshape economies and societies, the questions that every citizen of a democracy should ask are, who gave you that authority, to whom are you accountable, and what happens to the people who prefer a different reset? The appropriate response to the Great Reset is neither uncritical acceptance nor reflexive conspiracy thinking. It is engagement. Read the actual documents. Understand what is being proposed, by whom, through what mechanisms, with what accountability structures. Ask which of the proposed changes address real problems and which serve the interests of the institutions proposing them. Demand that any global governance initiatives include genuine democratic accountability, not just consultation with hand-picked civil society representatives. The future being designed at Davos will affect everyone. The people most affected are the least represented in those rooms. The Great Reset is not a secret conspiracy. It is an openly published policy agenda promoted by the most powerful economic and political institutions in the world. You are allowed to disagree with it. You are allowed to support parts of it and oppose others. What you are not well served by is ignoring it or dismissing engagement with it as conspiracy theory. The institutions proposing these changes are counting on your disengagement. They are counting on the complexity and the jargon to discourage you from understanding what they actually mean. This is the Redacted. We translate the jargon. Stay informed.